Hi there. We are looking today at gate 51, line 6. And this gate is called separation. Ra said that this is a line that truly embodied the mystical nature of all 6 lines. Gate 51 is part of the mystical circuit. It's the first step, in a way, after you've crossed the bridge from the materialism of the tribe into that potential spirituality of the rest of the mystical way. So there's that built into all of 6 lines because of genetic continuity. Separation is almost, he said, like a master keynote for the 6th line in the mystical way, and therefore, of course, because of genetic continuity, it becomes a master keynote for all 6 lines. You have to separate yourself from the mundane in order to meet the spirit of the self. This is sort of what it points to. So 6 lines, of course, they have to go through their 3rd line stage, and the 51-6 often experiences challenges and shocks in their youth. And then that leads them to sort of develop a really deep understanding of the value of separating themselves. That's sort of removing themselves possibly from the potential of shock and from environments in which they may become too competitive. So instead of getting involved in competition, they sort of sit on the roof and they observe and they assess. These are all the keynotes for the 6th line. They observe and they obsess. They don't obsess. Well, maybe they do. Maybe they're obsessively observing and they assess the situations from a safe distance. And they may ponder. I love that word. They may ponder what competitiveness actually is and whether it has any value. The 6th line likes to wait until they can see that there's a good reason for them to get involved with something. It's a bit of that, I'm not going to waste my energy if there's nothing in it for me. I'm not going to be competitive if there's no value to me. So it's also a thing where they may become sort of anti-competitive almost. It's like the 59-6 that's been through intimacy all its life and it's had all those bumping into things, or people probably in the 59, and then they get to that 6th line stage and they sort of abstain and they're just not that interested anymore. We find that then leaking through. I'm not sure leaking is the word I want to use, but anyway, we see it, that genetic continuity, the 6th line, it's not so interested in competition because they've been there, they've experienced being first, they've leapt into the unknown, they've done that. Sometimes they've been hurt from doing that. And so they're okay up on the hill, thank you very much. So Ra said, when you meet a 51-6, don't expect to feel the competitive nature that they may have, or that other lines in this gate may have, because there's nothing in it for them. And so they're not really going to bother. So aloneness, this is a 6th line keynote, or aloofness also. And so we have that aloofness coming in with separation. There's a link there. They have an ability to separate themselves from outside influences, and this can give them the space then to check out situations and to determine their own path as they work through this. And aloofness may feel like loneliness or isolation. We may decipher it in that way in our minds, but separateness also allows our 6 lines to gain clarity and wisdom. And we do really need the wisdom of our role model 6 lines. There's no detriment here. That's not true. There is a detriment here, but it's in Pluto, so it's dormant. So really we just look at the exaltation at the moment, and that says, in times of crisis, when all those around are confused and in disorder, it's the ability not to succumb to panic, but to have the will and vitality to survive alone. It's the power of the ego to meet challenges alone. So this is why the 51-6 goes up on the hill and they separate themselves and they become ready to guide others. But they also have that enormous capability and wisdom to do what is correct for them. So they're able to separate themselves out from the rest of that hexagram or from anybody else around them, really. And within that, they can see what is necessary. And sometimes we need that bit of distance, don't we, really? Ra says that all 6 lines are, in a sense, alone. There is that sort of flavor to them. And that can be as much because they're not committed to the nature of their hexagram in the way that some of the other lines are. But they also have a way of attracting people into their sphere, into their aura. They can attract people's questions and they can be sought out, through their whole lives because of that inherent wisdom that people recognize in them. The 57.6 is called utilization. And this talks a little bit about individuality and the melancholy that is inherent in this circuit, and how all gates within this circuit carry the hint of melancholy somewhere in their chemistry. Wherever you find an individual gate, you will find melancholy in yourself. And there are more individual gates than there are any other gates. So there's a good chance that you've got some individuality in your design somewhere. And melancholy is just a chemistry. It's the chemistry of happiness and sadness and hope and pain. And it's very similar in its way there to the wave, the emotional wave, in that it is just a chemistry and it doesn't need explaining. It's just there. It doesn't need a reason. Melancholy is also very creative. It's the creative aspect of being an individual. The creative environment of individuality comes through melancholy. Ra said that without sadness being accepted into the individual process, that there's no creativity, there's only deterioration. So the 57th gate is individual. It experiences its melancholy through its intuitive knowing. And part of that knowing is knowing that it needs someone else to help it manifest what it intuitively knows, because it's not a throat gate. No, it's in the splenic center. So it needs someone else to bring it out, unless it happens to be connected to the 20 in your own design, either because you have the whole channel or because you've got the 20, and so the transit gives you that. But if it's just hanging out there on its own, then it needs someone else. Can't do anything with its mutation if it's just on its own. It needs access to the throat. And this is not really sharing or empowering others. It can't do that either. Not that it's designed to, but it can't do that. It's no good having all that knowing if you're not able to share it and then mutate it in that sharing, get it out into the world. It needs to have some chance to manifest. So Ra says that these are some people who have the 57.6. They just stop paying attention to their intuition at all, because it can be very painful when you're not able to manifest your knowing. The 6th line is always looking for the inherent truth of its hexagram. This is all 6 lines. And because it knows that there is always the possibility of mutation, everything is subject to change. It's always on the lookout, it's always watching, it's focusing, it's assessing. It's watching to see that what is being presented as the truth of the hexagram has some integrity, that that's actually really clear and correct. They check that integrity. It's one of the things that they are always doing. It's part of that 6th line process. It's keeping an eye on what's going on. They're also looking to see whether the practical solutions that the 5th line is offering, whether they are reliable. And this can be especially useful in something like the 51, where you're about to jump into the unknown. Is that practical solution that the 51 is giving me, is it actually a good idea to be leaping into the void here? And the 6th line can say, yeah, good, go for it, or not. The 5th line is that universalizer of the hexagram, and Ra said in many ways that is actually the top of the hexagram. But are they doing a good job up there? Are they really legitimate in what it is that they're universalizing? This is what the 6 lines can tell us. They are aloof. They have to maintain their separateness until they can see that everything is correct and that the mechanic within their hexagram is working correctly. And at this point, they themselves can then stand by and live by the integrity of their gate. And then also part of the mechanic is that they then re-enter life and they're re-entering the world and the wheel is turning. And so the process is that we move to the next gate. That energy is moving forward in the circle of life. The 6th line becomes the 1st line and the journey continues. So the moon, we have gate 3 and gate 27 today. The moon is in gate 3 at 6:32, and these timings all in BST, remember, and gate 27 is at 15:37. I'm also going to peek into gate 24 because that's at 1:45 tomorrow morning. So the focus that the moon is bringing us is gate 3 here, and this is the difficulty at the beginning. It's a sacral gate, it's individual still in nature, and currently then it will be activating the whole channel of mutation because Pluto is still in gate 60. So this is an energy that operates in a pulse, and it doesn't have the energy and something is changing and nothing is changing. And oh, it's got the energy again and nothing is changing and nothing is changing. Oh, something's changed. So you could feel into that. Are you experiencing any of that energy today? Gate 27 is the gate of caring, and it's another sacral gate. And here we are being sort of asked in a way to take care of ourselves first, to place at least some of our attention on nourishing ourselves before we invest all of our energy into caring for someone else. This is tribal instead of individual, but it's that tribal circuitry now. It's the energy to support, to nourish, and to guide other people. And there may be a lack of awareness around correct boundaries if this gate is hanging on its own, if there's no gate 50 at the other end of the channel. So this is something that you could maybe tap into if you have the time, the energy, the interest to do so. You can ask yourself, are you able to sense when you lose sight of your own needs? Or maybe when you compromise your own needs for the sake of someone else? No judgment. No judgment at all. Gate 24, this is the gate of rationalization. Okay, so we are back in individuality again. And this is the gift that keeps on giving in the sense that it's an Ajna gate and pointing up to the head. And so it's one of those things where it gets into a loop. So, it's that contemplating the inner mysteries over and over and over until a concept becomes clear. And then there's the potential to impact others with a mutative knowing. Again, it's that pulse energy, that's what runs through all of individuality is the pulse. So can you feel how that's impacting you as we move into gate 24 a bit later on today? The sun transits over the next few days are going to be quite early, at least here in the UK. So I'll be posting recordings probably the night before, just before until I get back into sync with the sun. So we shall see how that goes. I will attempt to do it on time. I have so many alarms set at the moment. I look at it and I think, oh, what was that for? It could just as easily be the bread that's in the oven as it could be like, oh, I haven't posted today's line. So we'll see. Maybe I'll be posting toast tomorrow. I will see you when we move into a new gate tomorrow. And we're moving into gate 42, which is the gate of, it's actually called the gate of growth, but it's the gate of endings. So we'll talk about that. We'll get into that tomorrow. And yeah, until then, as always, go gently and I'll see you soon.